Mila Snow stepped into the grand ballroom of the exclusive St. Clair Hotel, her hands clutching the edges of her plain apron as if it were a lifeline. The chandeliers above scattered light like tiny stars onto the gleaming marble floor, and the well-dressed guests murmured amongst themselves, their laughter light but edged with the refined sharpness that only wealth and status can lend. Mila's simple navy uniform and worn shoes felt like a spotlight drawing eyes of quiet judgment, even though most people barely glanced her way. She kept her head low, her movements deliberate and respectful as she balanced trays of hors d'oeuvres, navigating the glittering crowd with a calm efficiency born from years of hard work in small neighborhood cafes. The gala was too elegant, too polished, a world apart from Mila's usual shifts behind cracked counters and dimly lit kitchens. Still, she told herself, this was a chance, a step towards something better. As she moved from group to group, the clinking of fine china and the scent of gourmet food filled the air. The soft hum of polite conversation wrapped around her like a chilly breeze. Then, an abrupt disturbance shattered the evening's perfect facade. A sudden sharp gasp sliced through the murmurs, drawing startled eyes to a cluster of guests who clutched their stomachs, faces draining of color. Whispers swelled into anxious voices, food poisoning. A prominent socialite staggered, supported by her companion, and the room's polite veneer cracked under mounting panic. A sharp voice cut through the chaos. That girl. She served those hors d'oeuvres. It must be her fault, accused Veronica Blake, a wealthy patron known for her biting remarks. Others quickly followed with hushed judgments and pointed glances, their disdain a palpable tide against Mila. The event manager's tone turned cold, ordering Mila out, demanding she apologize or face dismissal. Head bowed, heart pounding, Mila stepped away from the glittering crowd, burdened by a crushing weight of accusation she knew she did not deserve. Mila returned to her small apartment, the city lights outside her window flickering faintly in the late-night haze. The door closed behind her with a muted click, and the silence that followed wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. She felt drained, not just from the long hours of standing and serving but from the sudden, crushing weight of being wrongly blamed. She moved through the dim rooms almost without thought, her stomach twisting in knots as she reached for a glass of water. The last thing she wanted was to eat, and sleep felt equally elusive, the shadows of the evening's humiliation racing through her mind, refusing to be quieted. Her phone buzzed twice, messages from the cafe manager appearing on screen. Concerned words mixed with veiled warnings about the impact of the gala's incident. She stared at the phone, reluctant to reply. She knew her job hung in a precarious balance now. The cafe thrived on good relationships with venues like the St. Clair Hotel, and this ugly episode threatened to unravel the fragile progress she'd made just to keep her employment. Mila settled into a worn armchair, clutching a threadbare blanket around her. Her mind flickered back to times that felt a lifetime ago. She had been a bright student once, brimming with talent and ambition. A culinary scholarship had been her ticket out of the small town where dreams often faded before they even began. Early on, she thrived in the bustling kitchens of the Culinary Institute, absorbing techniques and flavors with a spark that impressed her instructors. But then her mother fell ill with a chronic illness that demanded constant care, draining finances and energy from her family. Mila made the painful choice to leave school. Those days, marked by long hours caring for her mother and juggling side jobs, stretched into years where her dreams were shelved and replaced by the urgent reality of survival. Nights spent cleaning rooms after hospital shifts, holding her mother's hand as the medicines battled what no one could control, it all took its toll. Yet, amid the hardship, she remained resilient. When she found work at the neighborhood cafe, she brought the same quiet dedication and precision she learned in school. The owner had once told her she had a gift with flavors and attention to detail, even if life hadn't allowed her to polish her skills professionally. For Mila, each plate served was a small triumph, a soft promise that she hadn't let her future slip entirely. Returning to the present, the contrast between that past and this moment was stark. The Gala incident wasn't just a blot on her name, it threatened the fragile stability she'd wrestled to create. The idea that people who barely knew her could so quickly consign her to blame, casting her aside without pause, roused a mixture of frustration and sorrow she tried to suppress. She felt invisible and vulnerable, smaller than she had ever imagined possible when faced with a crowd ready to judge. She thought about the wealthy patrons, their polished manners, tinted with subtle arrogance. They moved through their gilded world, confident it was theirs alone, dismissing those like her as inconsequential. Mila had always tried to keep her head down, to work hard and avoid conflict, but tonight's humiliation echoed in her mind, loud and clear. It wasn't just the accusation, it was the image of those glances, the whispers, the way she was singled out like an outsider who didn't belong. Despite the sting, there was a stubborn flicker inside her, a refusal to let this scene become the defining chapter of her life. She thought about the meals she'd carefully plated, the clean spills she'd wiped, the gentle smiles she'd offered in exchange for respectful nods. None of it deserved to be undone by suspicion so swiftly cast. She wasn't careless. She wasn't responsible for what had happened. With the dawn inching closer, Mila's restlessness made sleep impossible. She lay curled on the couch, images flashing, the well-dressed crowd's sudden panic, Veronica Blake's pointed finger, the cold dismissal from the manager. The unfairness cut deep, but beneath the emotional turmoil, there was a growing determination. She wouldn't vanish quietly into the night and let a moment of misunderstanding tarnish everything she'd survived. Her life had already weathered too many storms, giving up her dreams, caring for a sick mother, fighting to keep a foothold on dignity amid constant challenges. To lose this small job because someone else's mistake had been laying at her feet wasn't something she could accept without a fight. The voice inside her whispered that even if the world saw only a simple cafe worker, she carried more strength and integrity than many who wandered the gala halls. As the morning light seeped through the curtains, Mila sat up slowly, breathing deep. She knew the path would not be easy, but she would face this next chapter on her own terms. Her name might be tarnished now, but the truth wasn't lost. Somewhere in the chaos of those sparkling halls and polished words, there was a detail waiting to be uncovered, a piece of the story that could clear her name. And she would find it. Mila's heart pounded with a fragile hope amid the uncertainty. The weight of blame could crush her, but it hadn't yet. Her eyes, weary but resolute, focused on the small, quiet apartment around her. This was her reality, but it wasn't her end. She rose slowly, the decision settling like a steady flame within her. First she would rest, regain some strength, and then she would gather the courage to reclaim what was unfairly taken, a chance to prove that her place was real, deserved, and intact. The morning light painted the room softly, filling Mila with a whisper of renewal. The long road of sacrifice, the years of quiet endurance, they were threads woven into the fabric of who she was. And now, as doubt floated around her like a cold wind, she would find a way to stand firm, voice steady and clear, until the scales of judgment tipped back toward justice. Several days later, as Mila sat in the quiet corner of her modest kitchen, the events of the gala playing over in her mind like a broken record, a sudden flash of memory jolted her. Amid the clatter and hum of the kitchen before the event, she had overheard the head chef, Andre Marquez, speaking low and wired with frustration. He muttered something about the sous chef, Damien Cole, and how his sloppy handling of the food prep had risked everything. At the time she had dismissed the complaint. After all, it hadn't been her responsibility to police the kitchen staff. But now, the detail gripped her. The accusation against her didn't add up. She hadn't touched the platters in question so carelessly. With the flicker of hope swelling into resolve, Mila pulled on her jacket and headed toward the cafe manager's office after her shift. The cafe was quiet, a gallery of polished tables and soft lighting. The manager, Mr. Benson, a man with a conservative suit and equally cautious expression, greeted her with a nod, already informed of the leaked accusations from the gala. "I need to talk about the gala last week," Mila said quietly but firmly once they were alone. "There's something I overheard about the kitchen. The sous chef, Damien, Andre said he was careless with the food preparation. That might explain what happened." Mr. Benson sighed, rubbing his temples behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mila, I've told you, the hotel made a decision. They want to protect the event's reputation. Bringing this up again won't help. There's nothing we can do but move on." Her heart sank, but she stayed calm. "I understand, but if I don't clear my name, my job here is at risk. I didn't make anyone sick." He shrugged reluctantly. "I'll pass your concern along, but don't expect much. The gala organizer is powerful." Mila nodded, refusing to let her voice falter. When the door closed behind her, she tapped into a corner of quiet defiance. If the management wouldn't pursue the truth, she would. Later that evening, under the veil of secrecy, Mila slipped back into the St. Clair Hotel. The place was quieter without the gala's glittering guests, but the polished marble and crystal chandeliers still held the same cold air. She approached the staff entrance and found a security guard named Marcus, a young man who had often exchanged smiles and casual greetings during previous shifts. Hesitant but hopeful, she explained her situation. Marcus's eyes narrowed thoughtfully as she spoke. "You think there's footage that can clear you?" "I do," Mila said, voice steady. "I need to see if Damien's actions were caught on camera." With a nod, Marcus guided her to a small security office hidden behind a service corridor. Rows of monitors displayed feeds from various parts of the hotel. Marcus navigated to the kitchen cameras, scrolling through footage from the evening of the gala. Mila's pulse quickened as they watched. At first, the footage showed the bustling kitchen, chefs moving with practiced precision. Then, around an hour before guests began arriving, Damien Cole appeared, entering the prep area with a distracted look. His movements were careless as he accidentally knocked over a container of sauce, which spilled onto the tray of appetizers nearby. Instead of alerting anyone, he brushed it off hurriedly and continued plating. Mila pointed out the moments when Damien moved trays with a soggy, tainted topping, clearly compromising the food. Other staffers nearby exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. The footage was undeniable, a concrete link to the contamination. Marcus looked up from the screen, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "This changes everything." Before she could say a word, Mila busied herself capturing photos of the screens with her phone. She also asked Marcus if any kitchen staff might speak up. He mentioned that Marla, a line cook, had quietly expressed doubts about Damien's honesty but feared backlash. The next afternoon, Mila met Marla at a small cafe down the street. The line cook's hands shook slightly as she recounted her observations: Damien's distracted behavior, the nearly spilled sauce, and his disregard for hygiene in the hectic chaos of the kitchen. Marla quietly confirmed she believed Mila was set up to take the fall. Armed with footage and witness testimony, Mila felt a cautious spark of hope reignite. Her name could be cleared. But she also knew this path was fraught. Without her employer's support, she was alone in confronting the powerful worlds of hospitality and privilege. Nonetheless, the details she'd remembered, the images captured on camera, and Marla's brave words formed the cornerstone of her truth. She spent the evening carefully drafting a letter to the gala organizers, attaching screenshots and relaying Marla's statement, hoping they would reconsider their cold finality over the incident. The reply, when it came, was polite but firm, an invitation to drop the matter to preserve the charity's image. Frustrated but unyielding, Mila resolved to try another way. She planned to attend the next event hoping to make her case in person. It was a bold move, but she knew that truth needed to shine through, no matter the obstacles. As night fell, she sat by her window again, the images of the security footage vivid behind her eyes. For the first time since that humiliating night, Mila felt the weight of doubt lifting, replaced by a quiet but fierce determination. The story was far from over. The next gala was announced to be a more intimate event, a wine-tasting reception for a select group of donors supporting a local children's charity. Mila knew the guests would include many from the previous affair, including Veronica Blake and the gala organizer, Evelyn Hartman. This, Mila realized, was her chance. She arrived early, dressed in a simple but neat outfit instead of her usual uniform, blending into the shadows of the sprawling reception hall. The chandeliers cast soft light over clusters of wealthy patrons chatting comfortably, swirling glasses of expensive vintages. Mila moved with purpose, carrying a folder carefully hidden beneath her jacket. Inside were photographs from the security footage, printed witness statements from Marla and others, and a letter outlining her position, calm but firm. Veronica Blake was present, her sharp eyes flickering with hostile recognition when she spotted Mila near the catering station. "Haven't seen you here before," Veronica sneered, voice dripping with thinly veiled disdain. Her friends chuckled softly, but Mila ignored them, stepping toward the event organizer, Evelyn. "Miss Hartman," Mila began, her voice steady despite the ripple of whispers spreading through the gathering. "May I have a moment? I need to address the events from the last gala." Evelyn arched a perfectly shaped eyebrow, lips pressing into a line. "Mila Snow," she said icily. "I'm aware of your past statement and the decision we made. This reception is not the place for discussions of past errors. But I have new information to share," Mila responded, lifting the photographs and witness letters from the folder and extending them slightly. The security footage from the hotel cameras shows that the sous chef, Damien Cole, was careless. There was a broken container and contamination of the appetizers before they were served. Staff members are willing to attest to this. A hush fell over parts of the room. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Glasses stopped mid-air. At that moment, Damien Cole himself appeared near the bar, his eyes narrowing when he noticed the folder Mila held. He attempted a tight smile, but the veins of frustration were clear. Before he could speak, Mila continued calmly. "I'm here because I want to clear my name. I was blamed unfairly, and it's important that the real cause of the food poisoning is acknowledged before more damage is done." A murmur rippled. Veronica stepped closer, her tone sharp. "You're making accusations, Mila, without considering the consequences. You're stirring the pot." From behind her, a few guests whispered agreements tinged with doubt about Mila's place among them. But others leaned in, fascinated by the turn of events. Evelyn, the organizer, looked pained and conflicted. She glanced toward the podium, then back at Mila and Damien, weighing the unfolding drama. Finally, she spoke, her voice carried over the quiet room. "We take these allegations seriously. I cannot ignore what you've presented, Mila. Perhaps it's time for a thorough review." Damien's face went pale under his carefully maintained facade. "This is ridiculous," he said defensively. "I did nothing wrong." His eyes darted around, searching for support. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Mila held her gaze steady. "The footage shows otherwise. It's not about blame, but about truth and safety." One by one, the staff who had witnessed Damien's carelessness began to whisper among themselves. Marla approached nervously from a distance, slowly making her way toward Mila. Her presence bolstered the quiet momentum leaning in Mila's favor. As the discussion grew louder, Veronica's confident posture faltered. She exchanged a sharp look with Evelyn and some of the more influential guests who now viewed Mila with new interest. The room seemed to shift, the balance of power tilting. Whispers multiplied, questions flickered in eyes once filled with contempt. Words of support drifted. She was always careful. I never believed she was responsible. How could the manager dismiss her so quickly? Volunteers from the event staff stepped forward, affirming their respect for Mila and voicing shame over the rush to judgment. Evelyn raised her hands, calling for calm. Let's not forget, this event is about charity and goodwill. We owe Mila and all involved the chance to be heard. Veronica's face flushed, the veneer of control slipping as murmurs began to surround her own actions. The room turned to regard her with a mix of suspicion and disappointment. Finally, Damien's bravado broke. Under the mounting evidence and shifting social currents, he muttered excuses and retreated toward the exits, avoiding eye contact. The gala organizer approached Mila afterward, voice softer and tempered with regret. I'm sorry for the way things unfolded. We were wrong to dismiss your claims so quickly. Mila nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and vindication. This was no simple victory, but a step toward justice. As the reception wound down, Mila felt the weight of the night lift. The crowded room, once cold and indifferent, now held a tremor of respect for the quiet woman who had refused to be silenced. Her voice had been heard. Walking away from the radiant lights and murmuring guests, Mila's heart was steady. She had faced a world that sought to cast her aside and had carved a place where her truth could not be ignored. The social air had changed, subtle but undeniable, and with it, the meaning of her journey took on new light. After the reception wound down, the atmosphere inside the St. Clair Hotel's grand hall shifted palpably. The once hushed whispers and cold side eyes toward Mila transformed into a hum of quiet admiration. As the guests slowly filtered out, the night's true reckoning was beginning. The gala organizer, Evelyn Hartman, approached Mila with a warmth unfamiliar from their earlier encounters. Her voice, though still formal, carried genuine remorse. Mila, please accept my sincere apologies for the way you were treated after last week's incident. It was unjust to blame you without proper investigation. She paused, searching Mila's face for a reaction. We'd like to offer you a position to return to our catering team for future events, this time with a formal role that includes oversight responsibilities. Your professionalism and courage have impressed us all. Mila considered the offer carefully. The promise of reinstatement was encouraging, yet her pride and experience told her this was more than a job, it was the recognition she deserved. Thank you, Ms. Hartman, Mila said quietly. I appreciate the apology and the opportunity. I would like to return, but on the condition that proper standards are upheld, and no one else becomes a scapegoat. Evelyn nodded solemnly, understanding the deeper meaning behind Mila's words. That will be arranged. You have our commitment. Meanwhile, outside the hall, news of the sous chef's carelessness spread rapidly among the staff and patrons alike. Damien Cole, once confident and abrasive, found himself facing growing isolation. The hotel's management swiftly terminated his employment, citing a breach of professional standards that endangered patrons' health. The news circulated through the culinary circles and social pages, tarnishing his reputation and obliterating his prospects in the industry. Among the gala guests, conversations shifted to a tone of reflection. Veronica Blake, who had so promptly accused Mila, now grappled with public embarrassment. Though she hadn't issued a direct apology, many noted a marked change in her demeanor, a humility absent from that night's earlier bravado. A few guests confided in each other that Veronica's hasty judgment was a reminder of the dangers inherent in snap decisions born of status prejudice. Among the crowd was also Chef André Marquez, the head chef at the St. Clair Hotel, who had witnessed the entire sequence. He approached Mila privately as the final attendees drifted away. Mila, he said with a sincere nod. "I'm sorry for the unfair blame placed on you. You have my utmost respect and support. Your dedication to your craft shines through. If you ever want to return to the kitchen with more training, I'd be honored to help." The offer warmed Mila more than Mona's simple sympathy ever could. It was an open door to rebuild her culinary journey, this time with mentorship and respect. Weeks later, Mila stood behind the counter of her neighborhood cafe, a subtle change in her posture evident to those who watched quietly. She had returned to work, but now with a renewed sense of purpose that came not from being overlooked, but being seen. Her experience with the Gala had reshaped her confidence and reputation, earning her genuine acknowledgement from colleagues and patrons beyond mere sympathy. One afternoon, as she wiped down tables with practiced grace, the cafe door chimed. In stepped a woman in a sharp business suit, her expression bright and unmistakably familiar. It was Marla, the line cook who had helped Mila by speaking out against the careless sous chef. "I wanted to personally thank you," Marla said warmly. "Your courage has changed more than just your story. You've made this whole industry wake up." Mila smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied. "Sometimes, it just takes one voice to shift the tide." Across the city, the charity gala's reputation rebounded from its brief scandal thanks to swift action and transparency. The organizers, learning from mistakes, instituted stricter protocols on food safety and fair treatment of all staff, regardless of background, sensing the powerful lesson that Mila's ordeal had highlighted. One quiet morning, Mila found an envelope slipped under her apartment door. Inside was a handwritten note from an anonymous admirer within the hospitality world, paired with a scholarship offer to attend advanced culinary courses. The note read simply, "Your talent deserves to be nurtured. Keep going." Tears filled Mila's eyes, but this time, they were of gratitude, not defeat. The day came when Mila walked into the St. Clair Hotel once more, this time as a guest of honor at a small ceremony recognizing her contribution to raising awareness about food safety and integrity. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions, and the woman who had once been silenced found herself at the center of respect and admiration. Her simple uniform had been replaced with a tailored dress, but more than clothes changed, her bearing was proud, steady, and unyielding. As she left the building, the sun set behind her, casting a warm glow on the streets she called home. Passers-by who once overlooked her now nodded with recognition, and staff who had shunned her whispered words of encouragement and thanks. Mila's journey, from an invisible cafe worker to a woman respected and recognized, was not one of sudden transformation but steady resilience and unwavering truth. The silent woman they judged so quickly had, through quiet strength and determined spirit, found her voice and claimed her place. Her head held high, Mila stepped into the evening, no longer just a figure in the background but a bright, undeniable presence whose worth could no longer be denied or diminished.